Okay, today we're going to do section 1 notes for ALG2, and this is on expressions and formulas. Okay, and these notes you need to put down in your notebook. And if you have questions at any time, make sure you ask. First, we're going to go back and review from your Algebra 1 the order of operations when you simplify an expression. Okay, and before we go through those, we need to review the symbols. Remember, these are parentheses, these are brackets, and these are considered braces. Okay, parentheses, brackets, and braces. Okay, the first step in simplifying an expression is to simplify inside the grouping symbols. The grouping symbols are the parentheses, the brackets, and the braces. Simplify inside the grouping symbols and do the innermost group first. Simplify the innermost group. Simplify the innermost group. First. Okay, the second is to simplify any powers. So that's any exponents. The third step in simplifying an expression is to simplify multiplications, and you can abbreviate it. Simplify multiplications or divisions. You can abbreviate that. Divisions in order from left to right, and that's whichever comes first. So you go left to right. So if a multiplication comes first as you're going left to right, simplify it first. If the division comes first, left to right, simplify it first. Okay? And then the last step is to simplify any additions. You can abbreviate that, or subtractions. In order from left to right. Whichever comes first. So if an addition comes first, you simplify it. If a subtraction comes first as you're going left to right, you simplify it. Okay, so the order of operations: first you simplify inside any grouping symbols, then you simplify the powers, then you simplify the multiplications or divisions in order from left to right, and then simplify any additions or subtractions from left to right. Okay, and we'll go through a couple of examples here in a minute. Okay, then I want to just go back and review the terminology that I'll be using, and you've already actually used it in Algebra 1. Variable. A variable, term-wise, is any letter or symbol. It's any letter or symbol used to represent unknown quantities. Okay. Then the author also talks about a monomial. And these are terms I'll use too as I'm going through problems, so you need to know what I'm talking about. And if you have questions on it, just ask. A monomial is a number, a variable, so it might be a letter, might be a number, or an indicated product of a number and one or more variables. So a number, a variable, or an indicated product. Okay, so an example, just the number 12, that's a monomial. A variable like x, that's a monomial. An indicated product like 3y, negative 5x squared y cubed. Those are all examples of monomials. They're each one term. Then another term that you need to know is when I talk about a constant. A constant is just a number. We usually refer to constants when we're talking in for example, the quadratic expression. A number is just a constant. Another term is a coefficient. A coefficient is the number in front of a variable. The number in front of a variable is considered the coefficient. So if I said 6xy to the second, okay, the coefficient would be the 6. Okay, the variables an x and a y. Okay, the exponent would be an x to the first and a y squared. Okay, then the author also talks about the degree of a monomial and the degree of a polynomial. The degree of a monomial is the sum of the exponents of the variables. And sum means you add. So it's the sum of the exponents of the variables. Okay, so if I had a negative 8x to the second y to the fourth, the degree of that monomial is 6. 2 plus 4 is 6. Okay. The author also talks about the degree of a polynomial. All right. The degree of a polynomial, and that is the highest exponent in the polynomial. So if I had 5x to the third plus 12x to the fourth minus 8x to the seventh, the degree of that polynomial would be 7. Okay. The prefix, I guess I should define polynomial for you too. The prefix poly means many. So a polynomial, the prefix poly means many. So polynomial means many terms. And they can be added or subtracted together. Okay, that's why this would be considered a polynomial. It's got many terms added together or subtracted. A binomial is two terms. So if I say x plus 8, that is a binomial. If I say 5x squared minus 7y cubed, that's a binomial. There's two terms in each of those. And a trinomial has three terms. Prefix tri meaning three. So this one actually is a special case. It's a trinomial, but it's also a polynomial in general. So if I said 3x, if I said 3x squared minus 4x plus 8, that is in specific a trinomial, but it's also in general a polynomial. If it has three terms, it's a trinomial. Okay, now let's go through a couple of examples. And usually in the directions it will either say simplify or evaluate. Okay, and I want to see the steps to get to your answer. Okay, so example. Say they give you the problem 7 minus the quantity 3, and use a dot for times, don't use the x. 3 times 4, that close the parentheses, that quantity times 2 plus 8. Okay, and simplify it line by line. Okay, order of operations says you do the innermost group first. So 7 minus 3 times 4 would be 12. That quantity times 2 plus 8. Okay, then order of operations says any multiplications or divisions from left to right. So the 7 stays the same. Multiply 12 times 2, 24 plus 8. Okay, and then you go left to right. 7 minus 24 be a negative 17. Negative 17 plus 8. Okay, and you should end up with a negative 9. So final answer, negative 9. And it's a good idea, either double underline, highlight your answer, put a box around it, okay, something. Okay. Another example. Say you have negative 3 minus 6 divided by 2 minus 12. Simplify that expression. Okay, so first you go through and do any multiplications or divisions from left to right. So you leave the negative 3, you do negative 6 divided by 2, would be a negative 3, and then minus 12. And go left to right, negative 3 minus 3, would be a negative 6, minus 12, would be a negative 18. And then somehow indicate your answer. Okay, but I want to see the steps. I don't want just the answer. If all you do is show me the answer, I'll give your notebook back and you have to do it over. So do it right the first time. Okay, number 3. Say I give you negative 4 minus 5 minus 2 times, use a dot for times, 3 squared. Okay, so order of operations, there are no parentheses. Next thing you do is any exponents. So negative 4 minus 5 minus 2, 3 squared, 3 times 3 would be 9. Okay, then you do any multiplications or divisions from left to right. So you go ahead and write down the negative 4 minus 5. Then you multiply a negative 2 times 9, be a negative 18. Go left to right. Negative 4 minus 5 would be a negative 9. Minus 18 would be a negative 27. Then indicate your answer. Okay. And if you have questions, make sure you ask. Okay. Number 4. 12 minus 3 times 2 plus 5. Okay, there are no grouping symbols, there are no exponents, then you go multiplication or division from left to right. So you simplify the negative 3 times 2 would be negative 6, bring down the plus 5. Then you do any additions or subtractions in order, whichever comes first, as you're going left to right. So 12 minus 6 would be 6, plus 5 would be 11. Okay, final answer should end up with 11. Okay, then they may ask you to find the degree. And let's say they give you 10x squared plus 12x cubed plus 14x to the fifth. If it's a polynomial, the degree is the highest exponent in the term, so the degree of this would be 5. So the degree is 5. Let's say they give you a negative 17 x to the second y z, and on my z's I usually put a line in the middle so you can tell it's not a 2. Okay, and if it's x to the second y and there's no exponent there, it's understood to be a 1. Okay, so on a monomial you add these together. Okay, so that would be 5 and 1 would be 5 and 1 would be 6 and 2 would be 8. So the degree of this monomial is 8. You add the exponents on a monomial. On a polynomial you take the highest degree term. Okay, and then the last thing they will have you do is simplify expressions or evaluate expressions, and that's probably they'll either say evaluate or they'll say simplify the expression. And they're going to have you sub in values. So, example, if they gave you x minus y, that quantity to the third power plus 3, if x equals 1, and y equals 4. So sub in, if x is 1, sub in as y is 4, and then simplify. Simplify inside first, so 1 minus 4 would be negative 3, negative 3 cubed plus 3. Simplify any powers, so negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 should be a negative 27. Plus 3, and then simplify, you get a negative 24. A negative 24 should be your final answer. Okay, and then last one, if they give you 8xy plus z cubed, it's all over y squared plus 5. If x equals 5, y equals negative 2, and z equals negative 1. Okay, so sub in 8 times 5, y would be negative 2, and I usually put them in parentheses, and negative 1 cubed, and it's all over negative 2 squared plus 5. Okay, do the exponents first, so 8 times 5 times a negative 2 plus negative 1 cubed, negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 would be a negative 1. Okay, and then multiply. 8 times 5 would be 40, times a negative 2 would be a negative 80, plus a negative 1. Negative squared would be negative 2 squared would be 4 plus 5. Okay, so we'd end up with a negative 81 divided by 9, which would end up to be a negative 9. Okay, and highlight or put a box around it, circle it, double underline it, something to indicate your answer. Okay? Okay, that should be enough to get you started.